Hi, this is Kalyan Karmakar, and welcome to a new episode of Foodocracy for Her. Foodocracy for Her is India's longest running podcast showcasing women in the food and beverage business. I started this in March to April 2020. And, the speakers which we've had are absolutely fabulous. And it's a great pleasure for me to interview and introduce to you Dr. Tatyana Dias, who's from Mumbai. And welcome on board, Doctor. So great to
Thank
have you
you.
on.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, absolute pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. And Tatyana is Goan, and she's a doctor, and I'm Bengali. So when you meet a doctor anywhere, when we meet doctors anywhere, like social thing or at the market or whatever, then you want to ask them to check your blood pressure or like what would be the impact of Sopatel on my digestion the next day, or do I need to balance it with some roughage so that next morning is clear. So what sort of doctor are you, Tatyana? Can you sort of tell me that sort of advice that if I'm having Sopatel at night, should I have a like husk based poi or even maida pav is okay? Is that your specialization?
Well, actually, so I'm a neurobiologist by profession. I am a scientist, and I'm the kind of doctor that can probably tell you what's going on in your head while you're eating that sourdough. I can also tell you that for your general well-being, that maybe having it with the husk-based poi is the right way to go. And just in general, having sorpatel is good for you in any case.
You can never go wrong with sorpatel.
Yeah, you can never go wrong.
I was recently having some sorpatel and from an East Indian chef.
Okay.
In Bandra, Lady Chrysalis, I think.
Okay.
And it then struck me that if I was to do a rough estimate of my top 10 favorite dishes and top 5 in Mumbai, the Sopatel would feature in that. Not the Vindaloo, but Sopatel for sure. But before we get carried on with Sopatel and all of that, Dr. Tatyana has a very, very interesting story and very interesting work which she's doing. In fact, right now she's not even like in the scientific part, which was in earlier. She's doing something very different through the Veruschka Foundation and the Culinaris Cookery Academy, which she set up, and so on, and which we're going to sort of explore during the course of the chat. But so Tatyana, do you want to tell us a bit about like the Veruschka Foundation and what led you to setting it up? Because you were in Cambridge, you were out of India for 11 years, and one of the rare people who came back. And so why did that happen?
So I mean, for me, my sister Veruschka was my inspiration. I wanted to understand why her brain worked differently to mine. So Veruschka was 4 years younger to me, and she was diagnosed as being on the autistic spectrum. She had this uncanny ability to, remember songs. She would arrange things in a particular order. She was very affectionate, very loving. And the most important thing is that she was a foodie. So she loved food and she was quite adept in the kitchen as well. I was very interested to know why she was so different to me. And I guess that's where my interest in research stemmed from. Incidentally, I mean, we have a lot of initiatives now under Veruschka Foundation that are culinary focused. But personally, I hated cooking. When my mom used to call me into the kitchen saying, come and help. And, I would just back away from it and said, oh, but, I've got the latest episode of Star Trek and, Star Wars and all the rest. So I'm pretty big nerd in...
Can I interrupt you for a moment?
Yes, sure,
I'm really sad. Sorry about this.
Yeah,
okay,
sure.
Listen, when you are talking of Star Trek, are you talking of the new Star Trek or the old Star Trek? The original Star
I'm
Trek or the
talking
new?
about I'm talking about the USS Enterprise. So I'm talking about Patrick Stewart and that series of
So
Star
no,
Trek.
so not the first one, right?
Not the
Not
first
the
one,
black and
no,
white. No, I'll tell
not
you
the
why,
first
because
one. No,
today
I'm
on
not a big
Instagram.
fan of the first one actually. I'm not too sure why. I guess maybe I'm not too keen on William Shatner, but then Patrick Stewart definitely yes.
No, I'll tell you why, because today on,
Yeah,
and this is completely off topic, but
yeah.
last night on Instagram, I posted about how we used to hoard rubber bands. And, yesterday morning, as we sent some food to a friend of ours, and while packing, I used three
Okay.
rubber bands. And at night, another friend sent us food, and there were three rubber bands in the packing. So then, everyone got very nostalgic
Right,
and sharing rubber band stories. So then I was telling them,
right.
roughly 86, 87, they used to
Hmm.
show the Star Trek series on
Yeah,
television. So my friend
yeah.
Rupu figured out this thing where you can take two matchsticks and a rubber band and
Okay,
sort of matchboxes and open it, and it
okay.
becomes like a Star Trek communicator. And and
Oh,
and
how
and, so,
nice!
and I was just
That's
remembering that
super cool.
today. I was just remembering that today when you brought this up. So I said, because
That's
we grew up in a generation where we had to do all of these things, like even use paper ball, roll it up into a ball,
yeah,
use rubber bands, and then play cricket.
right.
Because we didn't have I mean, nowadays you can just sit with the phone and
Simply,
entertain yourself.
absolutely,
Yes, yes.
absolutely.
I'm so sorry.
Oh,
Now to
that's
go.
no, no. That's an interesting story, and I mean, definitely makes me think about the fact that when my mom used to say, "Why is it that you want to watch these crazy shows?" and I would be like, "Because that's the future." And just to make another point, that they were roaming with these kind of
Communicators.
iPads.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. And
and
I,
iPads, and it really happened. I mean, we really have those tablets now. So
can
that's
you
my
imagine?
sort of plug for for Star Trek, and then watching Star Wars and all the rest. My mom used to call me and I used to say, "Oh God, don't tell me to do all of this. I'm not interested in all of this stuff." But I,
But
I
Veruschka would cook. Veruschka would join up.
Verushka loved food, and she spent most of the time in the kitchen behind my mom, watching what was being made. She was very unlike me, and she had an interest, like even if you gave her a few peas to shell, she would shell those peas. She would help in whatever way she could. Verushka required 24/7 care. She was actually as far as we know, she was, my mom had a normal delivery in the sense that we call normal.
Yeah.
And she was diagnosed as having, so when she was basically 11 days old, she developed a really high fever. And as a result of the fever, she contracted meningitis, she had septicemia, and at that really tender age, she was fighting for her life. And she had like 150 injections and a lumbar puncture when she was that small. So it was thanks to Dr. Armida Fernandez, who was then the dean at Sign Hospital, which is where they really saved Verushka's life. I'm not sure she would have made it beyond that. So it was quite devastating for my mom and dad because they couldn't understand what was going wrong.
And
And she was born.
you yourself, from what I gather, was about 4 years old then.
Yeah,
So like
I
for you
was
to
four
understand
years.
also,
Yeah, I was four
uh,
years old. Correct.
so for you to
Yeah,
understand also would have been difficult, because like at 4 years, first of all, a baby's a new phenomena, and
yeah.
then when did you sort of begin to empathize or realize that she's different? Because see, in the initial year or two, in any case, a
I
child
think,
is a
yeah,
child. So it's only with
yeah.
2 3 years down the line that you start figuring that. So how was it then for you?
I think I was probably around maybe 8. I think when
Hmm.
Verushka turned 4,
Hmm.
and the sort of the an instance that really comes to mind, and I always remember it, is one where my mom and dad had, my parents went to every pillar and post to try and find some solution for their daughter,
Hmm.
trying to get her, in that sense of they were trying to find a cure in a way.
Hmm. Hmm.
And they've tried Ayurveda and homeopathy and acupuncture and all the sorts of doctors, including going to the religious. And so we went on this trip to Velankani, which is, supposed to be really miraculous. And it's very odd as a scientist and not a very firm believer in sort of the faith that I grew up in, which is being Catholic. Veruschka actually sang her first few words when we were there. And she never said it, but she sang it. And
When
it
she was
happened
4?
there. And
When she was
yeah,
4?
when she was 4, when she was 4. And so I think that was the time I started realizing that there was something different about her. It was a very momentous occasion for us in the family that had happened. Not only in the sense of it was like almost a miracle, that she started vocalizing because she was non-verbal till then, till the age
Till
of
4
4.
years. Okay.
Yeah, till 4. So, I mean, as a result of the meningitis, you don't really, anybody that's had meningitis, I mean, this is the case in adults as well as children, you don't really come out being the same person. And what happened with Veruschka was very severe. She ended up having almost 90% brain damage. So, she had to be cared for in the way that a baby is being cared for. And she was like a baby that never grew up. So even though she was like 10 years old, her physical age, her mental age was that of a 1 year old or a 2 year old, and that didn't really change as she grew older.
And did you feel, were you like a protective sister for her, or did you get on with your own life because you were so young yourself? I mean, with friends and all that. I mean, at that time, at that age, people are different, right? I mean, they want to sort of
Yeah, yeah,
you're on your own journey of life discovery, your preteens and all of that. So
that's right.
how was the
Yeah.
relationship between the two of you? How would you describe that?
I mean, I think since I remember this, so we used to live in Masgon, sort of like, sort of Baikala Masgon, till the riots happened in Mumbai in 1994. And so the good thing was that when my mom and dad were dealing with, all of this that was happening with Veruschka, my mom and dad had a very strong support system in my grandmother and in neighbors, so family, friends, and neighbors. And my godmother Jacqueline and a very good family friend of ours, Charlotte, they were the ones that actually raised me when my mom and dad were busy, running, like I said, from pillar to post to try to make sense of what had happened with Veruschka. So I think in that context, till we were in, and we moved away from Baikala when it was just after the riots happened. So till then, I would say that I led a pretty good childhood. I had a good childhood.
So
I
there
played
was
with
no
my neighbors and my
there was
cousins,
no
and
resentment or something that mommy daddy is not spending that much time with me. Sometimes the elder sibling has that thing. So that was.
I don't think I fully understood that, but I know one thing that did happen, and I think that was the turning point for me. So, we lived in a building where, there were families of diverse communities.
Hmm.
And there was a lady one of our neighbors, where Veruschka, while running up and down in the corridor, she ran towards her and pulled at her dress, and that lady turned around and said, "Isko leke jao, ye pagal hai." And I had that overwhelming sense of, oh my gosh, how could she say that?
Hmm.
And so I think that overprotectiveness set in then. I realized that this was a much bigger, like there was something different about my sister, and somebody was pointing that difference out, and I had to be there to protect her. So
And
I
how
think
old
when
were
we
you?
then moved from,
How old were you then? Like you said
I
about 10 or something, right?
I think I was 10. I was 10.
Okay.
I was around
So
10 years old. Yeah.
yeah.
I think
So
I
that
was
what
I
a
was 9 or 10 years old.
so which is still a very young age for the individual herself. I mean, for you itself, 10 is
Yeah.
a very young year. So I mean, that's when the sort of empathy set in. Lovely. And also, mid
Yeah.
90s. I mean, it's not that there's much understanding even today, but mid 90s and early 90s, like the understanding of autism and everything, even in Mumbai, which is the most progressive of Indian cities, would be so less. Even now, probably, when I first went to a Autism Foundation, which is near at King George thing at Mahalakshmi, and I went there, and then I wrote about them. And somewhere I used the word that children suffering from autism. So we have these
Yeah.
close friends who are British, and now they're back in England. They used to live in Bandra for a
Okay.
while, and we are very close friends. So then the ladies who wrote to me like in a DM
Okay.
saying that, I wanted to just point out something, that the article was very nice what you wrote, but in England there's a lot of change in way we are looking at autism, and one is to not use terms like suffering, because
Suffering.
sort of bring out the fact that it's not an illness. It's just So what and this happened maybe 4 or 5 years back. If I
Yeah.
take the 2 years of
Correct.
pandemic out.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what I'm saying is that even now, I mean, there's really not that much understanding. So in the early 90s, mid 90s, for you and your family, it would have been very difficult. But it's great that you had supportive parents. I mean, that's the beauty. Neighbors. I mean, that's the beauty of
Yeah,
Mumbai, I feel. Yeah.
absolutely. I think, Kalyan, you've hit the nail on the head. My parents got to know that Veruschka had something called autism when she was attending. We basically went to this school called Xaviers Foundation. It's one of Mumbai and India's oldest organizations. In fact, they turned 75 a few years ago.
Can you repeat the name,
Uh,
please?
Jai
Jai
Foundation.
Vakil. Jai Vakil.
Yeah, Jai Vakil. They are based in Surrey.
Okay.
And Veruschka was one of the first 5 students of the Sairam Autism Center that was set up there. And I think at that time, when we received her diagnosis that she was autistic, we started realizing that there was something called autism, and there was no real understanding of it. It was like autism had just arrived in India at that point, or a little earlier than that. When
When you
this
say
center was
autism
first
had
set
arrived,
up.
do you mean the knowledge of autism
The
or the
knowledge,
phenomenon?
yeah, the
Yeah,
knowledge,
because
the knowledge,
the
yeah.
phenomena would have been there before also, right?
Yeah, that's
I mean,
been there.
people.
That's been there for a while. Yeah, that's been there for a
It's not a
while,
new
and it
thing, but
was
the understanding is perhaps
the
new.
understanding. Yes, the understanding, and I think the understanding did come from people who were based abroad. Because the term was coined abroad. It was diagnosed and identified and documented abroad. And India was a completely different ball game. I mean, it had been happening, but no, there was no definition and no name to this diagnosis.
Yes.
And so we realized at that point that Veruschka was being clinically diagnosed and categorized as being on the autistic spectrum when she was attending Jevakil, when she was attending this, school, when she was doing her schooling there as part of the center. So I think for us as a family, we started to then realize, we started to make sense, and the team at the Sairam Autism Center provided a lot of support in terms of occupational therapy and physiotherapy and whatever is it that Veruschka needed.
And a
And
lot
we
of
trialed
travel for you
different.
guys also, right? Because theory.
Yes,
So were you
because
at
at that,
Masgaon then, or
yeah.
you moved out of Masgaon?
Yeah, we had moved out and we were then in Andheri. So from
So
Andheri,
Andheri to Sivri
Marol,
and
we used to travel every day. Yeah,
every day, huh?
yeah,
And what about your
yeah.
school and something?
Quite a long distance to travel. Yeah, every day.
So what about your schooling?
I was in. Yeah, so initially, like, sort of my, like this traditional junior KG, senior KG, that's something I didn't get an opportunity to do because my parents were understandably busy with Veruschka. But I went directly to the first standard. Yeah, I went directly to the first standard. And then I had to switch schools. I was in St. Agnes at Clare Road till my fourth standard. And then I was in Divine Child in Andheri from my fifth to the 10th. Schooling was okay. I mean, my mom and dad were both working parents.
No, the point I was just trying to make was that, like, mom and dad are working parents. You were in school in Andheri, stay in Andheri, and for people who are not from Mumbai, I mean, Surrey is like pretty far off and off the main track. So it would have been so much commitment and effort to take her every day. What does Veruschka mean? I mean, is there any meaning for Veruschka? Or is it just more like, it sounds like a Russian princess sort of thing? Is that it?
Yeah, well, actually, Veruschka was, the like my mom named her after my mom and dad were big fans of Russian authors. When they were sort of studying in St. Xaviers College, and they basically, wanted to name us with names that I don't know, that are sort of
So which is why
different in a way. And
which is
I'm
why
not
you're
sure that was
Tatiana, which
yeah,
is why you're
that's right.
Tatiana and
That's
she's
right. So my
Veruschka.
name came from Anna Karenina. Yeah, my name
Oh
came from
wow.
Anna Karenina because my father was reading that book at the time
Yeah.
and very taken up by Leo Tolstoy, and that's how my name ended up being this way. Verushka actually means truth. And I feel for us that was the reality and the truth of our lives. So it was very sort of, it made a lot of sense
Yeah.
all along. In fact, I think a lot of our identities were, our identity was connected to her. Like I said, my inspiration to get sort of science was through her.
In fact, that's what I wanted to ask you about. That I mean, she's left such a profound sort of influence on your lives as a family, and now on so many more people through all the work which you're doing, which you're going to come to very soon. But I just want to, I'm still sort of
Yeah.
trying to understand and grapple with the fact that the age gap between the two of you was 4 years, and the age gap between my
4 years,
younger
yeah.
brother and me is 8 years. So I know that when even when you're 8
Right.
and there's a baby, then after a few days you realize that okay, this baby is not that much fun to play with. I'd rather go out with my building friends and play Star Trek and communicator and all that sort of stuff. So
Yeah, yeah,
no, but point I'm
yeah,
trying to make is that it was very young and formative age for you, and this could have gone in any ways. In many
yeah.
ways, it could have been like resentment or indifference or whatever. So, I mean, first, the fact that you sort of were so touched by her, so cherished her so much, and were so protective about her is truly amazing. And then, when did the thought to do neurobiology come up? Because it's not really a subject which is that common, or stuff like that. Even when people go abroad to study medicine or science, they would probably do orthopedics or you know gynecology or whatnot, or urology. So what took you to this? Was it like, did anyone guide you towards it, or how did it happen? Would love to know.
That's, I think, in terms of, like I was saying, Verushka thought very differently to me. And
Hmm.
when I was in my, I think, sort of like, my eighth, ninth, 10th, and, an SSC board, as
Yes.
per our, education system, I started liking science a lot. And I started learning, the basics of the brain. And I had read somewhere, my father kept buying books to understand autism. And I happened to read somewhere in one of the books. I didn't really read that book cover to cover, but I did read some few bits in between. And I realized that what they were essentially saying was that what my sister had was down to the brain. And I said, okay, that's interesting because I can go to school and she's going to a different kind of school. And I couldn't fully, sort of put my, couldn't put pen to paper as to, what's going on here.
Hmm.
And I felt I needed to, read some more and learn some more. And
And keep in mind again, at that time you were probably 14 or 15 yourself, right? I
yeah,
mean,
yeah,
yeah,
I was,
8, 9, 10.
around, yeah, around that age,
Yeah. So,
And I think
so
I
the,
had, yeah, I
no,
had a
I'm saying
very
it's
good,
still a pretty young age, yeah, to
yeah,
to to be thinking so deeply. So
yeah.
which
And I
just
think,
shows the connection. Yeah. So tell me.
yeah. I think what happened is as I was, learning all of this in school and at the same time seeing my mom and dad, working hard, going to work, basically coming home, and, we had to rely on carers so that I could go to school, mom and dad could
Hmm.
go to work. And I realized the challenges of what Verushka had. and what our family was, day in and day out, what we were, what our lives were, what our daily lives were like. And so I started realizing that maybe, I don't know, in some naive way, there may be a cure somewhere. And I was reasonably interested in science. But for the longest time, I thought I would, I had like these, I had gone for, as just with many students in Mumbai, you go for an aptitude test.
Okay.
And I had done this at Prafulta, that is run by Don Bosco. And I had scored very well on arts, commerce, and science. And it was so funny. I was like, what nonsense. I have, like, I can do any of these. But I scored
Couple
the
days.
highest. Yeah. So I scored the highest in science. And I said, okay, maybe this is an indicator that, my interest is going somewhere. But I had these professions in my mind that, I would become an astrobiologist. I wanted to study, life outside, life in
Star
outer
Trek.
space. Star Trek, that was a heavy influence. I thought I'd become an astro.
Cat, please come to listen to you.
How cute. Yeah. And
I wanted to be an astronaut
maybe
when I was,
be an
8
astrophysicist.
years old. I can't imagine myself.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, I think it's that fascination of
all the Asimov
like
and
that
Star
that
Trek
attire, and it feels very sort of out of space captain like. I don't know.
Yes.
Maybe that's it.
Yes.
And then and also I had thought, I loved everything to do with the sea. Maybe I would become a marine biologist. So these were the three in my head. But
So
then,
marine, astro, and what is the third?
So an astrophysicist or an astrobiologist, or a marine biologist.
Marine biology.
Okay. Either out of space or deep in the sea. But incidentally, I don't know, maybe the pull of biology just in general was so strong, and the influence of Veruschka was so strong that hi.
What are you doing, Dinky? Are you an alien? Yeah. Sorry, you're telling me about the influence of Veruschka.
I think that I think that influence was so strong that I feel that maybe that's what ultimately led to me doing science in my 11th and 12th. It further reinforced that I was interested in like sort of something to do with the brain, and I was interested in research. And it didn't come easy because my parents, as you know, in India, the general consensus is you become a lawyer, doctor, and engineer. And my father was in HR. He was working for SR projects and construction at the time, for the SR group.
The Ruyas.
Yeah. Yes, exactly, the Ruyas. And my mom was a teacher. She was a teacher for 33 years, so a proper educationist. But they were very supportive in what I wanted to do. They didn't tell me you needed to study this or do that. In that sense, I think, they gave me a free hand. And I think till today, I can go to them with the craziest of ideas and they'll find a way to support it, even though they think it's crazy. But they've been very supportive parents in that way. And so when I
want to ask
them,
one big question before I move into something about you. No, I'm just interested because so many parents might be watching it and stuff. Is that how did your parents react to the fact that their younger child had autism, which is something which they didn't know about, and they understood its ramifications with time? And of course, you told me the initial understandable desperation to try anything to make her better, so to speak. And then after a while, then they realize that this is life. And you yourself was a kid then, but of course now you are an adult, and I'm sure sometimes you talk about it and stuff. So what is your sense of how? Because for so many parents, I mean, this might be one of the toughest things to deal with. So I mean, anything which we can learn from your family's experience would be lovely.
Yeah, so I think for my mom, she took it quite hard because for the longest time she thought that she did something wrong. And when there's no understanding in our society about about the fact that, this has got nothing to do with the mother. This has
Mm,
got something to do with some genetic influence, some environmental influence, or something to do with the fact that she had meningitis, and it was a result of the brain damage that manifested as autism,
mm,
which is what happened in Veruschka's case. So she took it really hard, and she couldn't accept that there was something wrong.
mm,
She tried to like kind of justify it in ways that were probably not very good for her own health. And my dad, on the other hand, he had to make things work, because one of them had to be, in that particular moment, and sort of say, okay, now we got to go. We just got to roll with this. This is
mm,
what we are having to deal with on a daily basis, and we just have to work with it and see what we can do. But it was very challenging. It was challenging in terms of understanding. It was challenging because they literally had no social life. And you asked me the question about what happened, like, when you were growing up and you were going to school. When I was going to school at that point as well, I clearly remember one occasion where my mom had come home from work. She was so tired, and I had come home from school, and Verushka was playing at home, and my friends from the building were calling me down. And she told me, why don't you go, go down and play. And I looked at her, and I looked at my sister, and I turned around to my friends and said, no, I'm not coming. And that no, I'm not coming, that happened, I think this was in my 8th standard. From 8th to the 10th, I don't think I actually socialized as much. So I think,
and that is the
um,
time for, like, people to, like,
yeah,
really go out and hang out by their friends by themselves and
yeah.
discover life.
Yeah, that's right. So my parents didn't really have that much of a social life. We couldn't go
Mm,
out as a family for any, like for dinner or for lunch, because people would stare. People would say, "Oh, ye pagal hai," and it kind of just added to the anxiety, and it added to whatever we were already feeling, in a way that we are trying to make sense of all of this.
mm,
And it was very challenging on finances, because my mom was a teacher, my father was, working his way
sorry.
up to the top, earning a monthly salary, and then, you're paying for medications, you're paying the doctors, you're paying the therapists. What a special, sort of a special family, in the context that, in Catholicism, we believe that a special family is one that's chosen by Jesus or by God, to have somebody like Verushka in their lives. So in that context, but a family that's a chosen family, that we would now use new terminology, or new age terminology, that a chosen family has to deal with a lot more. You have children, and just to bring sort of
And is there any
concept.
purpose given for this, that why the family is chosen, like,
Yeah, exactly. So that's a very good point. So in
because
Catholicism, we
why
usually
you will
believe
want to
that,
say that, why did you choose me? I mean, why
why did
us? I
you
mean,
choose me?
that's a
Yeah,
normal tendency.
exactly.
So how does the story end, like the theory end, the
Yeah, the theory ends that, the chosen family or the special family is one that can deal with something like this. They can deal with challenges, in the context of, you are given what you can deal with, and not what you can't deal with. And because of that, there's a higher purpose to why this person is part of your life. And I feel that really did translate like that, because all of us were connected to Verushka. We felt we got more out of it than she probably did from us. And so for my mom and dad, there were these societal pressures, there were pressures of, like financial pressures, like I mentioned. And then having another child in me, and, ensuring that I was also growing up, it was definitely not easy. My mom took a 2-year break from her career because my sister wasn't well. She really dedicated her life to my sister. And in fact, at that time, just to mention, she did several as a teacher. She thought maybe we should set up a business of our own. They had wanted to migrate to Australia, but it didn't happen. My mother had got a job in the Gulf, but the Gulf War broke out and she couldn't go there. So my family couldn't be there. And but when she took this break from, so she was a teacher in St. Xavier's High School, which is at
Okay.
Metro.
Correct.
And
I'm doing a
yeah,
chat series
and
nowadays with
she,
Kurush Dalal, and then he's from St. Xaviers School, so he's telling us some of his stories. So your
okay.
mom was a teacher there,
Oh,
because Kurush
very
was
nice.
long
I
time
didn't know
back.
that. Okay.
Kurush was. I'll send you the link later about what used to happen at tiffin time.
Oh, very nice. What a small world. That's very
Absolutely.
nice to know. So my mom was a teacher there for 33 years, and then she also became the first lady principal there. She was
Wow.
principal for 8 years of St. Xavier's. Yeah.
Wow.
So she was the outgoing principal when the school turned 150 years, and she fundraised and did a lot of things for the school just
Wow.
before she retired, which was in
Wow.
2018. And St. Xavier's High School has all these illustrious alumni like Gavaskar and Julio
Hmm.
Ribeiro and Deepak Parekh and all the
Hmm.
rest. So it was quite nice for her for her career to go from teacher to being a principal. But at that time, when Veruschka wasn't well, she decided that maybe we should set up a food business. And
Hmm.
she did several different courses at IHM Dadar,
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
which was not called IHM at that time, but these housewife courses is what she
Yes.
enrolled
Yes.
for. And at the weekend, she did
It was in
course in
Andheri, right?
confectionery and bakery.
It was in Andheri then,
No, it
right?
was in Dadar. She used to.
Okay.
No, it was in Dadar.
Okay.
She traveled to
Because
Dadar.
I'd
Yeah, yeah.
interviewed someone who said that at her time it was not called IHM and it was originally at
Dadar
Andheri,
Catering College.
then came to Dadar. Yeah.
Ah, I see. Right, right. So this was when it was at Dadar, and she did all these different courses in confectionery and bakery, and all the rest. So she wanted to do her bit, and support Verushka and the family. And I think I saw this growing up, and for me, it was very pertinent that I took that forward. For me, my sister was my life. And
Wow.
I felt that it was only something that I could do, maybe, take forward what my parents were doing and really get to a stage where I could look after her independently. And that's how St. Xaviers College happened. I went to Sapphires, then Xaviers. I passed out with life sciences and biochemistry. And then in a bid to become a scientist, I applied to TIFR. I tried to give the entrance exams. I didn't crack it because, they had calculus in there. And I have some of my classmates who did crack it, but I was not one of them.
Yes.
And I went off to the UK. My godmother, Jacqueline, really supported that dream of mine, and along with my parents, this is what happened. She kept checking when were the education fairs, and in the newspapers, and that's how we came to
How
know that there
sweet.
was a education fair where one of the universities, which was University of Edinburgh, was there. And that's how I applied to them, and I got a scholarship for my masters. And I did my master's. That's where I specialized in neurobiology. I then further did my doctorate. And then 7 years in Edinburgh, I was in love with the city. I didn't want to leave. But my PhD mentor, both a husband and wife team, Katrina and Thomas Becker, I mean, they have grown from the small lab that I was part of to now then being director of the center in Edinburgh. They told me that you have to get out of Edinburgh. You need to have a career in science. You need to get out, go somewhere else. And the UK had at that time changed their work permit policies. So basically, David Cameron was in power at that time, and the Tory government was in power, and there was a lot of crackdown on immigration.
Mm-hmm.
I had applied for a job, and I was very specific. I wanted to understand how we could go from basic science to application and how to take that from the bench to the bedside, and to take it to the clinic. And so I worked heavily on different types of stem cells. I worked on stem cells in fish, and then I worked on human stem cells in Cambridge. And we were building basically mini brains in a dish, trying to model conditions like Down syndrome, conditions like dementia. And so I applied to this one lab, and I remember my mentor telling me, "You're crazy. You're going to go back to India. You're not getting that job." because that lab is in Cambridge and it's not going to happen. And, she said, just think, like apply somewhere else. It may be that you may get it, but just be a bit more open-minded. And I said, no, this is what I want to do. Either I get this or I'm going back home. And I got it. And, then I was in Cambridge for 4 years. But then, and I had plans to take Veruschka away from India because vocational options for children like her was very far and few between in Mumbai. It
Even
was
today,
important.
yeah.
Even today,
I mean, there are organizations like yours doing stellar work, but it's still, and also, like you said, the larger society, like, going to a restaurant and everyone sort of staring and,
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel, so for me, it was important to take her away. For me, it was important to have a sustainable salary to look after her, and especially supporting my own dream of being a scientist. I had to stay away from India. But thinking like that, 11 years passed by and I didn't know where it went. I was away from home, and it used to always break my heart. I felt like I was not living here nor there. It was very weird. It was a very weird feeling. I sometimes felt that suddenly I got so much of time on my hands. I didn't know what to do with it because those time slots were always filled with feeding Veruschka, giving her a bath, helping my mom and dad.
when
And
you're
out of
back
the blue,
home,
now I
yes.
had all this time in the world. And, I like my colleagues would say, why don't you join a sport class? And I was like, what's that? Like, or, what, like, how do you do all these things? Because I never had that. And in fact, to be very honest, in Edinburgh, I found the silence deafening. It was so quiet. Life was so quiet. With Veruschka, life was full. I didn't have a moment to, I used to struggle to do my science journals, because she would come and want to scribble on them. So much so that my professors in Xaviers would be like, who is scribbled on this? Why is your journal in this state? Do you know that this is being graded? And I was like, yeah, but and they didn't know about Veruschka till very much later. It just so sort of came out, in one of the classes. And incidentally, you mentioned it, it must have been quite a challenge traveling. And when Veruschka was attending school, my mom was going to school in Xaviers and I was in the college. So often what would happen is, because all of us had to get ready, my father was stationed in Gandhinagar for almost 10 years.
Gujarat.
And he was in Gujarat before
That
he
must be where
moved.
their factories and all that must be.
Yeah,
No, South?
exactly. Yeah, exactly. So
Wow.
he used to travel, in Gujarat quite a bit, but he was stationed in Gandhinagar. And so the three of us, my mom single-handedly managed the home while my father did his bit to provide for the family. And I used to often get late going to college, and I would miss the first initial bit of my practicals. So one day, one of my professors, who was one of the reasons why I pursued science, she was very instrumental in encouraging me. She took me aside and said, what is going on every time you're late? I don't understand this. Where's your commitment to this? And I don't know how that day, I mean, I usually never mentioned it to anybody, but I found that level of comfort with her and I told her. And I was quite
So it's not that you used your
emotional
sister as
with
an
that.
excuse, otherwise you didn't. I mean,
No,
you
no,
didn't
never,
tell
never.
people that this is why you
Yeah,
just
yeah,
took the scolding quietly or whatever.
yeah,
Otherwise.
yeah. Yeah, because I felt like, telling her, like telling people about her would be, like you said, an excuse. And I'm trying to gain some kind of
Yeah, I mean,
sympathy.
I didn't mean excuse,
Yeah.
but yeah.
No, but I mean, that was in my mind.
Yeah.
I was thinking, Arey, I'm going to try and gain some sympathy. Like, how is that? Clearly, she's not the reason. Like, obviously, we
So
live in
what did the
Andheri as
professor
well,
say?
pretty
I'm so sorry.
far.
Sorry, what did the
She
professor say?
she she was actually a little taken aback, and she said, why didn't you tell us this? And I said, what is there to tell? I mean, she's my sister, she's part of my family. It doesn't affect it should not affect my performance. And she said, yeah, but these are important things for us to know as your mentors, because
Wow.
that will help us to guide you further.
What was her
And
name?
her name was Professor Radhya Gupta. She is somebody that I even thanked in my thesis, because if it wasn't for her and that intervention at that time, I don't know, probably I would have not done science, because there were some people who did come to my parents and they did tell them that, and did tell me, why are you aiming to do science? I mean, look at your family background. I mean, look at you have Veruschka. Your parents are not well off. You all are coming from humble beginnings. We were living in a pagdi style system in Baikala, to then moving to a BA in Andheri. It took my parents, because of all these financial pressures, it took them right up to their 40s to buy their own place, which is now in Marul. So it was not easy. My father got, the house in Andheri initially was company accommodation. So there were people who told me that, what are you doing? Like, this is science is for those who can afford it. You should just end up
Theoretical
doing a
science,
teaching.
yeah.
Yeah, do a teaching degree and become a teacher. Like, Mama, why are you doing all of this? So, but it was nice that, one of those people who said it when I did do my doctorate, they did write me an email, and the person said that, apologized for saying all of that.
Wow.
And not that I kept it in my mind, but,
But so
it
sweet.
was,
In fact, sorry, I'm hurrying a bit because we don't have that much time.
yeah,
The
yeah, sure.
conversation's been just so fascinating. I want to make this like a 2 or 3 episode thing, but it's
Sure.
I mean, so far everything which you're telling me, I mean, this concept of Catholicism, of a special family, I mean, it's really coming through. I mean, the inspiration which Veruschka did in the short span of her life. I believe we lost her a few years back. But I mean, in your parents, I mean, the way they sort of stress themselves in you from a very young age, and the mentors whom we mentioned at Edinburgh, or Professor Gupta, Radia Gupta in Xaviers. And I'm just asking all of these because I'm later going to share this link with my our neighbor and sort of like I don't know, like spirit daughter, like we call her, who's in Xaviers College,
Yeah.
but because of the
Okay.
pandemic, she's not attended
Oh, nice,
college yet.
nice.
But during the pandemic, she learned how to
Okay,
bake, and
nice.
she bakes and feeds us a lot of stuff.
Oh,
So
lovely.
Tatiana, I must say
Nice.
that your story and this conversation has been absolutely fascinating, and uh, and I want to sort of delve even more into it because there's so much for us to learn as human beings. I mean, for people who are in such situations, and for the rest, I mean, how, like even this person whom you said who had once probably criticized your way of thinking and probably out of good intention, but the fact that,
Yeah,
got back and later said, I mean, it would have taken so much for that person to do that. And but I think it's great.
yeah,
But the
yeah.
reason why I'm hurrying you is that
Absolutely.
you said you took up Instagram at the beginning of the pandemic. So the thing is that what
Yeah.
in my limited understanding, it has to be within an hour in IGTV. Otherwise, you have to cut it, and I try not to cut it. I mean,
Sure,
other
sure.
mediums are
Yeah,
fine.
yeah,
So we've got
yeah,
about
yeah,
13
yeah.
minutes in which
Sure.
you can tell
Yeah,
us about the Veruschka Foundation and
yeah,
everything, and what we can expect over there. And I'm very interested because even when I went to your Instagram pages, like,
yeah,
on the Veruschka Foundation, you're talking about autism, and you're highlighting the young cooks and all of that who are coming out and the work they're doing. And then in the other page, the culinary, this thing, cookery, right? Culinaris Cookery, right? The other page
yeah.
is, or
Culinaris Cookery Institute. Yeah,
yes. So
yeah,
over
yeah.
over there,
That's right. Yeah,
there's so much of a health angle which you're bringing in, like, festivals and refined sugar, or reading the labels, or
yeah.
stuff like that, or getting amaranth based granola versus oats and stuff. And you're not really a nutritionist. I
No.
mean, so please tell me a bit about the please tell us a bit about Veruschka Foundation, what it's doing, its different legs, and
Yeah.
I won't say how we can support you, but I would say how we can gain from it, because once we know about all the wonderful
Sure.
stuff, we can enrich our lives by sort of ordering from there and stuff. So please go ahead. And you've got now,
Sure.
thanks to my chatting, 11 minutes and not 30.
Okay, no worries. I'll keep it short. Okay, so like I was saying, coming back to the fact that we wanted to take Verushka away. Now, what happens is the biggest problem that we have here in Mumbai and in India, and I mean, this is the case even abroad, is that once a differently abled child, so this is the correct terminology, differently abled, we are also neurotypical, you and me, Kalyan, and my sister Verushka was neurodiverse. okay, because her brain works differently to us. Now, for neurodiverse individuals, whether they have Down syndrome or autism or cerebral palsy or intellectual disabilities, which is what Veruschka Foundation supports, all these developmental disabilities, they go to a special school or they go to a mainstream school. But following that, there are no vocational options. Like just like how I mentioned, I had the chance to go to Xaviers and then Edinburgh and then Cambridge and etc. and etc. They don't have these options, and it's pretty restricted. So the special schools and vocational centers, the few that there are, they end up keeping the child and associate with the family for a certain amount of time, like either till the child is 21, 22, 23, and then after that the family and the adult, they need to figure out what's next. And when Verushka was at that age, we found it very difficult to give her an opportunity to be part of one of these setups. And so the plan was to take her away. But in 2015, she unexpectedly passed away. And that was the darkest year of our lives for me, my mom, and dad. To make sense of everything, we felt that we needed to set up something in her name that we could take her memory forward. It started as a very small cookery competition called the Cook for Change Challenge, which then grew into this foundation. And as my father always says it, he had the vision to support that initial dream of mine, but didn't have a plan for the foundation to become so big. And so it's really scaled in the years that we set up in 2016. We are a Section 8 NGO, and we essentially support and we empower those who are differently able, because we felt that there needed to be that gap. We needed to fill in that gap where the parents were having to find a vocational an option, and which then led to an independent way of life for their child. So we were in a bid to do that. And like I said, we started with a cookery competition, but we realized that there was a capacity to train my bachus. They are all above the ages of 14, 15, 16, and 18. But for me, they are all bachus because somehow I don't know, they are like all my kids. Besides the
And
fact
they,
that
they are, if you look at the traditional definition, they are like almost equivalents of high school or sort of people, right? Because you said 14, 15, 16, 18.
yeah, that's
18 would be when
that's
you're
right. Like
joining
sort of
bachelor's
college going
graduation. Yeah,
bachelor's. Yeah,
yeah.
when
So
you're finishing your bachelor's is when
yeah.
you are 18. Yeah, around that time. And so we felt that no, I spent 3 months in India, went and visited different schools in Mumbai and setups, and realized that there was a lot being done in terms of this vocational, like they had aspirations to do it, but it was not being able to translate because of a wide variety of reasons, resources, time, money, etc. And so we wanted to build a foundation which served as a platform for those who had developmental disabilities and their families. But what happened is, as we were doing these awareness activities, we've run an activity called Growing Change, where we taught our students how to go from a seed to a plant. We've done an event called the Stage for Change, which leveled the stage between commercial artists and our and my bachus. But we felt that there was a capacity to train, and that's how we started Culinaris Cookery course. We ran 2 editions of this course in St. Andrews College in Bandra. We went from
Oh,
9 students to 22 students. We were featured on the
that,
cover
that
page of the Midday, which was
that's
really
just next
nice.
door to where I live, St. Andrews College. Wow.
Yeah. Oh,
That's where
wow.
the
Okay. So
theater
you
is.
stay on that street.
That's where
Okay.
the theater
Okay.
is and everything, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we live pretty
Right.
close
Yes.
by.
Yes. That's
Yeah.
correct. So they have a Okay, so they have a hospitality section, and we, with the support of the college management, they provided, the infrastructure and the chef, and I designed and managed the program. And so, like I was saying, we were featured on the cover page of the Midday. It was a lovely thing for the foundation. It was a lovely thing for the parents to realize that there was an option for their children. But it was challenging to think for me of how I would provide for all of these families that kept contacting me for the 9 months after the article had come out. So clearly there was a need,
Yeah,
and I
the
didn't know how I
reach.
was
Yeah.
going to support all of these people.
Hmm.
So as the numbers went up and the demand went up, we decided that we would set up our own institute, and that's how Culinaris Cookery Institute was started by my husband Rohan. who is actually a copywriter. Has got sort of 15 years experience in the advertising industry.
Oh, wow.
But after he met me, I think life changed for him as well, and he decided to hang up his boots, sort of make my mission his.
And
And so he
he knew
started the
Veruschka?
Instagram.
Had he met Veruschka?
No,
So
no, actually, we connected. Yeah, we
after
connected after I
you
came
lost
back
her.
to India.
Okay.
Yeah, after I lost her, and actually, marriage was not something that was on my mind at all because finding a life partner who would support your aim of looking after your sibling is pretty hard. And I thought if it happened, great. If it doesn't, then I'm okay. Let's see how it goes on. But Rohan was a chance meeting, and so he set up Culinaris Cookery
Maybe
Institute, and
something to
that's
do
how
with.
we got into proper vocation training.
I'm saying it's maybe something to do with copywriting, because my wife's in advertising, and she started as a copywriter, and in fact, that's when I met her. I was in strategic planning, and she's the one who really pushes me to
Okay.
follow my
Right.
routines. And foodocracy for her
Oh,
is her
nice.
fabulous favorite thing of what I do, and I know that she's going to love this. So I think
Oh,
maybe it's
lovely.
like, we should do a thumbs up for the copywriters. Yeah.
Oh,
So you
definitely.
yeah. So you set this up, and
Yeah,
then
definitely.
now I'm saying you guys set
Yeah,
it
we
up,
set
and
this
then
up, and we set it up, and we from the training. Now what we do is we work with a 3 point based approach. We help my bachus to be independent at home. We provide them assistance if they would like to start or scale up a food business. And we also, what we do is we help them in terms of placement assistance in the mainstream food industry. So
okay.
I've had one of my bachus, Sarita, who basically trained under us and went back to her village, which is outside Pune, and set up a small business, which is running a tea stall at an ST stand.
Wow.
Okay. And at the same time, with the mainstream employment, I had three of my bachus working under Chef Sanjeev Kapoor at his studio kitchen
Wow.
in Andheri West, and also one boy, Gaurav Mistry, who was working under Chef Ranveer Brar at his studio kitchen. So by
Wow.
default, we end up placing our students at studio kitchens or at high-end restaurants because there is that time and space for them to learn, update their skills, and grow.
And
If I
also the
place them in an empty
management is
restaurant, it
perhaps
would not
also,
work.
and also perhaps the management is also a bit
Sensitized,
more evolved with that, because if
sensitized,
you're like
and yeah.
if you're like running a day-to-day like sort of thing, then maybe they might not really understand. They might not have that appreciation. I mean, they're good people who run this thing, but you have to get someone who's not pulling the same weight
Yeah,
perhaps, and so and they can,
yeah, yeah,
and the kids can, and you also
absolutely.
retail stuff. So tell me, how did that happen?
Yeah.
Because
So
that was your mom's dream, right? So
yeah,
how did you?
exactly. In fact,
Yeah.
yeah, that was something I think, life comes full circle. I don't know whether I'm living my mom's dream because she never got to do her doctorate because she then ultimately she was carrying me. So she was doing her B.Ed while she was carrying
Oh
me, and
God.
then the
So
doctorate
so
never
my mom
happened.
was doing her B.Ed when my she was carrying my younger brother, and I think she took her final exams.
Oh,
I think
wow.
eight days before he was
Yeah,
born, and it's because of her B.Ed
right.
that she brought us up, because dad passed away a year or so
Oh,
after that,
wow.
couple of years,
Yeah, I
and
understand. Yeah,
she was a B.Ed professor. So
that's
so
incredible.
so so your mom's a B.Ed teacher. Your spouse is a copywriter, and we all like Sopotel. So lots and lots of
Yeah.
connections. And I remember the Christmas box which you guys gave.
Connections.
It was so
Yeah.
sweet, because there were the lovely products which you guys had made, but the fairy light and the little the Santa Claus and the little Christmas
Yeah.
tree. And
Yeah.
I've grown up around Christmas trees, and I was born in Canterbury, which is of course
Yeah.
center of the Protestant faith. And we our
Yeah.
house was in the middle of repairs, but we took that tree out, a little tree, and put it up there, and put up the lights, and I put up a
Oh, that's
picture of the
lovely.
Christmas foods which some of our neighbors had sent,
Food. Yes, correct.
and
Yeah.
put
That's
that.
nice.
Yes. So tell us a bit about, like,
I'm
what
glad.
do you guys do in retail, and we've got
Yeah.
about a minute.
Yeah.
Sorry
I'm
to.
glad. No, no, no worries.
uh,
I'm glad that you love the hamper. So essentially coming back to this point about employment. Now, as I was speaking, basically knocking on every door in the food industry in Mumbai, I realized that it was easier to place my boys because the fact is the fact the food industry is heavily male dominated, and placing my girls not only was a safety concern for the girls in terms of, what the risks the employers were willing to take, as well as, the family feeling safe that they could send their daughter there, in terms of travel and all the rest. And so what inevitably happened is we felt that our girls were not being provided for. And so we wanted to set up an employment initiative that was in our mind for all the years that we started Culinaris. And
And how
so we
lovely,
felt,
because I mean, I don't know whether one should say regularly able girls or whatever, but
yeah,
even them and their parents feel a bit this thing about getting into the often toxic
yeah.
male kitchen environment, you know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And kitchens are small spaces. The head chefs would often tell me, "Ma'am, come and have a look at our kitchen. It's so small. Where am I going to put your girl?" And what
Mm,
usually happens in the food industry, you have the head chef who's highly trained, but all the line chefs are people who work themselves up to that
mm,
point of being a line
mm,
chef. So they joke with each other. They use, there's profanity.
yes.
They all in jest. Nobody means
Hello.
anything, and it's a pretty heavy, heated environment. And so the head chef would often tell me, "Nan, you expect me to put your girl in this scenario? Nahi hoga." So that is how we ended up setting up a Bite Better. We make a whole range of millet based ancient grain products, which are,
And why that? Why millet-based ancient grain? I mean that has no connection with the rest of your story so far. So
yeah.
why?
So most of my bachus, not all, but many of them, they are on antidepressants, they are on antipsychotics, they are on anti-epileptics, and that was the case even with Veruschka. They tend to have a voracious appetite. And as a result of that voracious appetite, you put on a lot of weight. And
Mm,
exercising is also difficult for some of them because they tend to have respiratory conditions. They don't have a lot of stamina. There's a lot of
mm,
fatigue. So we wanted to make products which were healthy, which
mm,
my bachus, since they are involved, so it's an inclusive team of abled and differently abled chefs that make these products. So I wanted to make products which my bachus could eat themselves safely. And they love the cakes and the cookies and the biscuits and chocolates and all the rest. But if we can provide them with a slightly healthier version for them, it's much better. Because I can't make a product which is made out of
maida and
maida and white
butter and
sugar.
sugar and yeah.
And it's because we work on this concept of the whole training concept is you teach a man how to you feed a man a fish and you feed him for a day, and you teach a man to fish and you feed him for a lifetime. So
Yes.
we work with that positive reinforcement, that if you, from a neurobiological perspective, that if you love a samosa, if I teach you how to make one, I'll give you two. So with that concept, like when I got my bachus who are now employed with us, I've got four of them: Manjari, Dhriti, Gaurav, and Gulam.
GT I
And
saw on your page, yes.
yeah, and we do have boys, because behind every successful woman is also a man. And
I says the
so
other way around, but yeah.
yeah. But we feel that they will tell me, "Ma'am, see, we made these cookies. You know how when you trained us, can we eat two now instead of one?" So we that is why millets, and that is why refined flour free, and this is why refined sugar
And
free.
I guess that the poor things. I mean, if you're making it yourself, it's very hard to stop someone from eating that, because you said
Yeah,
like it's a child's mind, right? I mean,
absolutely.
I see all the chefs today now, they are so health conscious, they don't eat anything and they make all this stuff, but you can't expect kids to do that. So
Yeah, yeah.
but the consumers are everyone, right? Because I mean, unlike your bachus, I mean, they are grown-up bachus like me, with a huge appetite, and not really someone who loves to exercise. I mean, it's a way of eating, I think, which is beneficial to all. I think that's a
Yeah,
message.
it's sustainable.
Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's
So is that the
sustainable.
market you're slowly
Yeah,
aiming at?
that's right. It the a market that our sort of our target segment is those who are looking to, those who are conscious of what they're eating, and
Mm.
those who would like to support a sustainable way of living, because millets are really good for the environment as well. I mean, in
Yes,
fact,
yes.
2023 is
The
going
year
to
of the
be the year
millet.
of the millet. And in fact, even the government has this, they are in fact thinking about introducing millets as part of the midday meal. Because the more we
Mm.
learn about rice and wheat in terms of nutrition, it's better that we work towards our way in terms of sustainability. So in that context, we are looking for customers to what we have, what our offerings are, to really see and support the fact that it's a good product, and with the added bonus that it is made by an inclusive team.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've seen that your focus, in fact, it takes me back a bit to your Xavier's days, is the fact that you're selling it and pitching it on the basis of the fact that it's a good product and is good for you. Also made by, people who are differently able,
Also made by,
but not
correct.
the other way around. I mean, just as when you
Yeah,
were in college, yeah, you didn't tell
yeah,
people that you had the sort of issue at home and wanted leeway because of that. So it's actually product first.
correct.
So it's not coming from a
Yeah,
defensive, apologetic, or help us sort of thing. And
yeah,
and I'm sure that that spirit of, I think, independence, self-reliance, self-assurance, I'm sure permeates into your students. And also what I've seen
yeah,
is that you've also kept it very local. So like it's not oats, but you're, I mean, it could be, but you're also talking of, ragi, jawar, amaranth. You're talking about jaggery, so you're not talking
yes,
about, stevia and stuff like that. So it's and I think the pandemic showed us that how it's important to appreciate what's local, right? I mean, um, so
yeah,
is that a conscious
absolutely. I
message? I
mean, you
mean,
hit the nail on the head.
because you
Yes,
lived
you definitely
abroad
hit
for
the
11
nail on the
years, you
head.
know the best of products
Yeah,
abroad, and
yeah,
you could, get French
yes,
butter and British cheddar and all of that, and do different sort of products
yeah,
as well.
yeah,
So sometimes
yeah,
desi
yeah,
stuff can be boring, like
absolutely. Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So
No,
is
no,
that also sort
absolutely.
of,
You
uh, please.
Yes, yes, absolutely, absolutely. You hit the nail on the head. I think supporting something that's regional, supporting something that's local, supporting something that's seasonal is definitely what we are aiming for. It's very important for us to support the area that we are in. And considering we are in Mumbai, we are in India, I mean, it's very important to know that we wanted our products to appeal to the average person and not
Mm,
just people who are affording. So this
mm,
is why we stayed away from stevia and erythritol. Personally, I don't really support those kind of sweeteners anyways, but
mm,
we kept it with jaggery only because, ultimately in the end, whatever sugar you eat is sugar at the end of the day. So, it's about eating in moderation. But at least if I
yeah.
can give you that jaggery with a millet, it's probably
Mm,
better for you than, you eating
yeah.
a cookie off the shelf.
No, but I'm really glad that you said that because I have a friend who's a diabetologist, and now I mean, even I have like early diabetes issues and stuff like that. And through her, I realized that often when people say no processed sugar, and they say there's jaggery or honey or etc. etc. Um, it's sort of perhaps better than white sugar, but if you have diabetes or all of that, it's not really a good thing unless, like you said,
Yeah.
in moderation and stuff. So I think I like the fact that you sort of brought it out because I've seen and especially I must say here home chefs, because probably they don't have to go into such detailed labeling
Mm.
sort of practices as the FMCGs.
Yeah.
So they might say sugar free and all that, and you might think it's good for diabetic
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
and all that, but it. So I think that there's also a very noble way of pitching it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, it's very important to make to say this, that jaggery is not the best alternative. But the point is that at least by using jaggery, I can keep my cost at a point where it can appeal to just everybody. I didn't want to make products, like I said, that were high end, and also something that we don't personally support. Things
Hmm.
like stevia, this, and it has a sort of a different kind of aftertaste. It's an acquired taste. It's
Hmm.
expensive,
Hmm.
and it's not for everybody. And so I feel for that reason, and also jaggery is so local. I mean, I think we are. I was just reading the other day that India is one of the highest producers of jaggery.
Yeah, I
It's
mean, I come
also
from Bengal.
supporting. Yeah.
I come from Bengal, which is all about jaggery, and especially in winter, there's so much in Maharashtrian cooking where jaggery is used, Gujarati
Use. Yeah.
cooking, and
Correct.
yeah.
That's
So
right.
okay, so I
I think
mean,
we've gone over time.
no,
Yeah.
we've gone. I sort of realized that. So
Yeah.
it's fine for Instagram. I'll just cut it. So guys who see the first section, please see the second as well. No,
Right. Right. Sure.
but this conversation is important. So I don't want to like this thing. So I want to ask you one question before one closes. That how can we, like anyone who's watching this, sort of support you? And I know that when we mean support, like from whatever I've understood from you, it's not that you're looking for help. I mean, you are sort of empowering these your bachus and stuff like that, and you're making them self-reliant, and that's the spirit. So it's I mean, there are various ways of support which people can do, but say how can the regular Joe, maybe who loves food and sort of this thing, how can we support you? Like, is there somewhere where we can go and buy your products, or where can they be shipped across the city, across the country, or is it on order, or do you do weekly batches, festivals? Just tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, for us, in terms of support, we are trying to. It's been an interesting journey from, like you very nicely summed up all of our careers. For us to, move from our professional careers to setting up an NGO, and now from an NGO to setting up a brand. We are learning as we are building this business. And it will be a social enterprise, is what we are formalizing it as, because in the 1 year that we set it up during the pandemic, we have a culinary institute which we had to utilize that space. And
Yes, it's
so what we
physical
did
space.
is, yeah, when we stopped our programs in person and then made that online, we utilized that space to sort of set this employment initiative up. And incidentally, our in-person programs are beginning from Monday. So we took an entire year and a little more to set all of this up.
From this Monday, from
This
the
Monday. Yeah, that's
wow,
right. That's right.
what date would that be? Because
That's the 24th. Yeah,
wow,
24th.
wow,
So we're keeping our numbers low, and we are sort of
awesome.
maintaining our COVID protocols and all the rest. But we're very excited to be having our students back in our culinary institute and get back to some training. But we're very proud of the fact that we were able to solve one problem of our employment, which was for our girls. And now we have an option to give our parents that, there is this option which is working with us. And if we are to grow this initiative and grow this brand, which will then enable us to, speak to an investor to raise, some money and capital, and, proper brand building. And Rushina is, kindly helping us with all of that,
Yeah, Rushina Muncho
is to
Gildial.
actually,
Yeah, of course.
yes,
I'm saying Rushina Muncho
is,
Gildial, who's like one of the seasoned food writers, entrepreneurs of based in Mumbai, but like really working with people during the pandemic as mentors as well. And she was the one who first told me about you. So yes.
yeah, yeah. So, we are sort of, we are trying to build this. So the average Joe is the most important person for us, because the average Joe can help us to spread the word of our work. The average Joe can place an order. An average Joe can, place an order, like, for, we do sort of not only our daily, we not only have like sort of our usual daily offerings, but we also have hampers that we do during the festive seasons. So we've
Hmm.
had, in the past, like for Christmas, we've had people who've found out about us and who are based abroad, but they've ordered hampers for their family back in India. We've had people who have ordered for their loved ones. We have a Valentine's Day menu coming up, or
And
I mean,
do you
hamper
ship
where you
across
can build
India?
your own.
Yeah, do you ship across
Yeah,
India
some of
depending on
our
the product?
products. Yeah,
Depending on the
some of
product.
our products. Yeah, some of our products we ship across India. Yeah, it depends on the product. It depends on the product. But like for Valentine's Day, we have something really exciting where we have a millet-based blueberry cheesecake. We've got basically a millet-based red velvet cake, which is not made with the traditional, whipped topping cream, but it's made with a cream cheese buttercream. And we've got a lot of offerings like that, which is where you can build your own hamper for your loved one.
So guys,
So
no, I must give a tip here that guys, like if you want to sort of score a brownie point with your loved one, I think women would be rather impressed if you give them something which is sustainable and things like that, and might lead to you're building a sustainable relationship if that's the plan. Of course, I don't know how kids today think, but
nice one.
well, see, I mean, living 21 years with a
Definitely.
copywriter,
Nice
20
one.
years of
Yeah.
marriage, so living 20 years, thoda to hai, especially during the work from home days and listening to.
Right.
So eat sustainable red velvet cakes on Valentine to build a sustainable love life. Corny.
Oh, very, very, very nice, nice pitch for that. I'm going to take note, and I'm sure Rohan will really enjoy watching this bit. Maybe I'll be able to sort of, have a similar kind of experience, maybe 20 years later. Yeah.
And then we'll see in 2032 how many people who bought those Valentine cake are together in 2032.
Very true. Very
Tatyana's
true.
thinking that my interview has gone
Very
mad.
true. Very true.
No, but it's
No,
just
no, no. It's
it's
fun.
just
It's fun.
fabulous, and I think that even the Veruschka Institute perhaps can also gain, like maybe if they're professionals like from the
Yes.
food industry or the branding industry, who I mean, I'm just guessing that if they want to sort of give their time there, like Rushina, Ranveer, Sanjeev Kapoor have done in various ways, or things, I think probably there might be some, probably they can contact you and see if something can be done, because I'm sure that will also be,
Absolutely.
like I recently
Yeah,
interviewed Anaita
absolutely.
Dhondi in the
Okay,
series, and
nice.
she's
Yeah.
one of the young chefs who's focusing a lot on millets and stuff. So it's interesting. I think
Okay, lovely.
whether this thing. So this could
Yeah.
almost become a 2 hour long episode, but it's
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
really fascinating. Maybe we'll
Yeah.
do one again later. But folks, I hope you like this episode, and do share it and tell people about it, because I think the work which Tatyana is doing is truly fascinating, to the Veruschka Foundation. And so what are the two Instagram pages for the retail? It's a better bite, right?
Yeah. So a bite better is
A bite better
our
is
a
on
bite better
Instagram,
is
is the handle.
yeah
A bite better.
a bite better is on Instagram, which is where you can order our products. You can either DM us, or I mean, DM is the best. We are setting up an e-commerce site which will have a sort of a connect to Instagram, so you can directly order. But there is a number that you can contact. You can contact us through Veruschka Foundation as well,
Yes.
where you have all the updates of what the foundation is doing. And like you rightly said, I mean, any food professional in the industry that would like to contribute in any way is more than welcome. We are always looking for volunteers, and yes, contribution is not always in terms of a donation or money, but it can also be in terms of your time, your expertise, your mentorship, anything that you would like to contribute to.
And
Definitely.
spreading the word, and buying the cookies. So that's what you can do.
And
And
spreading the word,
yeah,
absolutely,
yeah,
which is invaluable. Yeah,
yeah.
which is invaluable, because the more we are able to spread the word and have that support, we will be able to grow our initiative so that we can employ more bachus,
That's right.
and they can be contributing members of their families.
And for guys who sort of identified the woman of their dreams, it might just help if you on Valentine's try their sustainable cupcakes and cheesecakes and so on. And who knows, it might last a bit longer than you might have thought it did. But with that, thank you so much, and
Yeah,
thanks so much for sharing
thank you.
so transparently from your life, which I'm sure, I mean, now you're smiling, but I'm sure it wouldn't have been easy for you and your family. But it's invaluable that you did that, because I think that it gives us a lot of understanding for people who probably not lived that life. I think makes us think a bit differently. Maybe want to search out and help out, and also for people who are in circumstances like yours, because I'm sure that, I mean, there's a lot of support needed, emotional, mental, and a lot of that, and sort of listening to you and seeing what you people have gone through and what you've done, and how in a way like you lived up to the sort of concept of being a chosen family. I think hats off to all of you, and wish you all the very best in your endeavors in the future. So thank you, Tatyana, and thank you for your time.
I think you're very, yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Kalyan. Thank you. It was a real pleasure. Thank you so very much. Thank you.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you.